All right, we have 4 interviews left at this pop-up podcast on Imagine AI live conference here. Thank you for joining me. Please tell our audience who you are and what you're up to.
Yeah, sure. My name's Alison Earl. I came in from Australia for this conference. I think
Wow, all the way from down under there.
I think I might get the award for the furthest distance
I think that's
traveled.
technically further than New Zealand. I knew that there was somebody from New
Oh,
Zealand.
is there someone from New Zealand?
But
okay.
I think Australia would be further. So I think
yeah,
you're the
I
winner.
think I do,
Yeah.
right? So look, I lived in New York for a long time and London. So I like to come back to the States because
Okay.
I find it's a very innovative place.
Rejuvenating,
and everyone's-
maybe.
Sorry?
Rejuvenating.
Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
But I work with organizations that are going through change processes. So whether it's a organizational restructure, digital transformation, merger, could be a merger kind of going on, leadership changes. And I really deal with the people side of it. So how do you help the people get into the best place to accelerate success? So whether that's leadership alignment and just getting them really operating as a high functioning, high performing team, or driving a mindset that's more adaptive and responsive and open to change rather than resistant.
Wow.
AI would have to be the biggest transformation any organization I'm working with is either experiencing right now or going to experience. So for me, getting on the front foot of it is really important.
Wow. And just to clarify, who are you working for? Are you working for somebody else? Is it your company?
It's my company, yeah.
Oh, great. And do you have a team?
So at the moment, it's really just me that does the actual working with the clients, but I have support.
Okay, great.
I have support. I'm learning about a lot more AI agents that I could be using as support through this conference. But it all started out by doing more like keynote speaking. When I published my first book, it was more keynote speaking around thriving with change and all that stuff. Yeah,
you're right that dealing with change and the people aspect of things, like you don't want to be told by an AI or a robot that, oh, your job position that you had is something else now, or the company is going in this direction. You need that human touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you see AI impacting this change economy of the space you're working in?
Well, it's going to change everything. I think that in terms of the organizations I work with, I think it's one of those things we can't necessarily conceive what it's going to be. And one thing I know through all the work I do is that uncertainty is more stressful than known negative. So it's until we kind of have more of a picture about what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be interacting with it, the people that are going to be adopting and expected to take these things on are going to be in a bit of a state of threat, a lot more resistance and just uncertainty, triggering off all sorts of behaviors. So part of what I work with organizations to do is say, well, how can we kind of minimize that piece? How can we help them understand why they might be reacting in the way they are, get out of defensive mode, self-preservation mode, and just jump in and start using it?
Right.
As action paves your way out of fear. Right. If you do something, the fear starts dissipating because it's not as uncertain anymore. But the reality is, I mean, I think one of the most powerful things I heard, there's a lot of powerful things I've heard at this conference, but just the immediate future is unrecognizable, and that should be expected in the next 2 years. I just don't know that many organizations are necessarily ready for the sharp change and how quickly it's going to happen and the people in it. So I think that's something that even I was a bit like, wow, that close, it's going to be feeling unrecognizable. So
yeah. Have you worked yet with clients that have had to do job displacements, cut jobs because of automation and AI?
Every organization I work with, it goes through major cuts, right? So it's the restructures, all of that stuff. And that's really unsettling. I did some work with Meta in Singapore. After they went through a number of restructures as they kind of reorganizing. AI is obviously a huge part of the way they're working. And you can only describe when organizations go through that, where they experience such a shakeup to their employee base, like their people they worked with closely are now no longer there. Teams quartered in size more, right? So there was a lot of people, I think 20,000, all up in that last one. People as humans almost experience trauma and grief through that process. It's so drastically different.
Right.
And it is a bit of licking your wounds and trying to figure out how to move forward, but they're moving forward with a shaky kind of feeling, about it all. So how do you kind of get people back into a space of optimal performance, feeling trust and embracing. That's all part of the journey, I think. It's not smooth.
So what is it that you're like, what's your advice to people that have to do that? Because you're right, if you don't do it right, it's such a big change and such a big pivot that if you don't do it right, it could totally ruin the
The
morale,
culture,
the
yeah,
morale
the
and culture
culture.
at the company.
Yeah, 100%. I think, look, I don't know the answer
Hmm.
entirely because I think we're seeing such big disruptions to culture that it's hard to know exactly the right things to do. But I just think we need to do a little bit more of that, getting people to understand the steps involved. And so the more that we can decrease the uncertainty around what's going on, thinking about how we actually manage the relationship aspect of it.
Hmm.
We know if this is where we're going to be, because we're not going to stop. Organizations are going to look at how to become more efficient,
Yeah.
and there will be, a clear out of skills that aren't needed anymore, and that will drive efficiencies and opportunity. But how are we getting from here to there, and how are we going to minimize the pain on the organization? We need to be really thinking about those aspects
Hmm.
of the digital transformation too, because if it's just a clear out, nobody feels safe. Nobody understands the why behind some of these things,
Hmm.
and how are we supporting that transition.
Hmm.
I think we've got to not lose the human side of it as
Yeah.
people are working through it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen those viral, layoff moments in the, pandemic when everyone was on Zoom and like the CEO gets on and
Yeah.
does something very kind of cold and abrupt and is
Yeah.
just not in touch. What's the appropriate way to do it though? Especially in such a remote world, like at least you try to do the one-on-one
Yeah.
video call, like human to human.
One of the best, a really great CEO I'd worked with, he ran a big global pharmaceutical, and they were merging with another big global pharmaceutical company.
Hmm.
And it was a huge process, and a lot of people were going to be displaced through the process because you've got two companies coming together. All of a sudden there's just one marketing team for,
Oh,
so there's a
sure.
lot of that. And a piece of advice he gave me when we were talking through that transition and how do you reduce that fear and uncertainty and damage to the culture that can
Hmm.
happen when you do that. And he just said it really simply. He's like, we've just got to keep being human with people. So rather than trying to pretend like it's that toxic positivity, oh, there's only opportunities, it's like, well, there are people that are being hurt and displaced through this
Hmm.
process. So while there are opportunities, this is actually a really uncomfortable part of it. And we don't always know what's going to happen. And, as he said it to me, he goes, I say to people I'm leading, I know it's really hard. I have the same conversations with my wife at home. Like, I don't know how all that's going to, I
Hmm.
know that it's difficult to not know where we're going to end up and how we're going to go. And that ability just to connect with each other as humans and be authentic, I think is really part of it.
Yeah, it's odd because of all the people speaking here and all the stuff going on, you don't want AI to make layoffs more efficient, or like this firing process and restructuring. Like you don't even want like AI is causing that stuff, and you
Yeah.
don't want an AI solution to that other process. And we're going to see so much disruption in the
Yeah.
future, and it's hard to. There's no one size fit all answer, and
There's not one size fits all. And I think if I was, talking to an organization that was looking at implementing AI and the potential that it could have for the organization, a really important piece of that would be the culture of the organization and how we are supporting that, not destroying it through the
Mhm.
process. Firstly, look for the place where AI can just really make life better so that people start to get that introduction to it, make us all better, make us more effective, and then let the efficiency pieces of it. Maybe that's a step change part where it's happening over time, but
Yeah,
people aren't feeling at war with AI. Instead, it's a
right.
natural part
They
of
don't get.
business evolution, because it is a natural part of business evolution.
You're
It
right.
happens all the time.
Yeah,
But if we're
just
if
having
we're
a.
blaming
Yeah.
AI,
Mhm.
then all of a sudden AI is the evil thing that is
Right.
taking our jobs, as opposed to actually AI made my life a ton easier and we're way more effective, and I actually learnt new things and I've got that opportunity. And if I'm then down the track being impacted by it in a way that's not as great, it's not AI that's my problem anymore. It's the changing nature of business. So
You're.
it's a different, that's not as damaging to a culture.
No, you're right. It's almost like CEOs and companies and businesses should start talking about AI more within their company, encouraging all their employees to use it, and start playing around with these tools themselves.
Yes.
And watch the productivity happen within the company, but also for their personal lives, and the light bulb will click for them.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, it won't be a blindside to like, hey, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this thing that's coming?
Yeah. No one wants to be a victim of it, right? Like that's the most disempowering thing in the world, to feel like it's happening to you. But if you feel like it's happening for you, that's a very different kind of feeling around the whole situation. So if AI is something that's there, that's actually making me better, giving me new opportunities, I'm all of a sudden getting to dabble in work that I've never done before.
Right.
That puts me in a position of empowerment. It makes me learn more and grow as a person. And maybe, just maybe, because of the efficiencies that come through that whole process, I'll have a new role in the organization anyway, right? But if it happens to me in a way that I get displaced before I've even got an opportunity to wrap my head around what it is, then all of a sudden I become one of the victims of AI, and I've got a negative relationship I've not learned and grown through that experience. So hopefully there's more opportunities for that as organizations implement.
Definitely. And I don't know if Eric Vaughn is speaking, and I think he's up next possibly. And I interviewed him on the podcast, and he's got this AI first mindset with his employees of over 100 plus, and he like encouraged them all to learn the AI tools, and they made a game about it. And he actually, like, the bottom 20%, like, he was like, okay, we're going to have to transition you somewhere else because you're not right for this company. And I want to make sure that you listen to that speaker. Any parting thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
I think for me, I'm just really excited about the potential of, like, we talk a lot about the potential of the technology, and that is awesome. I've been mind blown by how far things already are.
Yeah.
But I'm still really just excited about the potential of people and the potential of humans because of this technology. And I think if the two things are always playing together, then we'll end up in the right place. But that's probably where I'm excited, and what I hope other people are looking for too. If we're not doing it for our potential to add value to the world, and then why are we doing it, right?
You're absolutely right. Well, Alison, thank you so much for sitting down at this pop-up podcast, and I'm glad you're enjoying the event, and I hope you come to our next one.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.